Excellent. I'm going to just fix how mine looks and then stop waving my cursor around. Cool. So here's where you are. Like Maren said, we're going to spend about an hour, probably a little less is my guess, but I don't know. I can be long-winded, so maybe I shouldn't make claims. We're going to talk about how to become the radical midwife your community needs, and we're going to introduce ourselves in a moment in case you don't already know us fairly well. Oh, there we go. Who the heck are we? You want to go first, Maren?
Yeah, hi, I'm Maren, and I am a mother to 10 children here in Sedona, soon to be relocated elsewhere. I've been a midwife in this community for, I don't know, 12 years or so, and founded Indie Birth with Margot a long time ago.
Cool, and I am Margot, and I'm a midwife here in Duluth, Minnesota. I've been attending births for about 10 years, 5 of which were with Maren as a student, and then the last couple on my own here in Minnesota, like I said. I have 2 kids, one who is 6 and one who's almost 2. And what else? I think you're going to learn a lot about me today, so I won't say too much more. If you're new here, we're super excited that you're here and found us somehow. We always love hearing how people have found Indie Birth, and I also recognize lots of familiar faces, so I'm glad we also have some old friends here as well. It's a nice mix, it looks like. Okay. Well, we wanted to start off, I'm not going to show all 13 minutes of this video, and hopefully it works. I didn't click that button that it didn't ask me if I wanted to share video when I started. So hopefully it just works. If it doesn't work, someone needs to just like give me a wave that it's not working. This felt like we like to start things with birth videos, right? Because it's fun and gets everybody thinking about birth, in the mood to talk about birth. Who doesn't love a good birth video? And so as we were thinking about which one to show, this one came to mind. It is a really lovely client of mine who I have attended now 2 of her births. This is her 2nd birth. And it felt really appropriate because she's also partway through our Indie Birth Midwifery School. She decided to become a midwife. She actually knew she wanted to be a midwife before she had her first baby, but waited until she was pregnant with her 2nd to start the program. So she is a home birth client of mine and a student midwife. And we're talking about how to become a midwife. So it's also really cool if it does work. You can hear her water break, which is cool. It's like it's a snap. So I will skip to about 2 minutes in and hope that it works. If it doesn't work this way, I can open it on Vimeo as well. That's a funny way to start it. But.
Yeah, it might feel better in the tub. For me.
I think it actually was more like 2:40 that I wanted to start it, sorry. The door does get opened. Can people hear it?
No, can you just let me be? I'm getting crabby. water just broke.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh God, here it comes. In the toilet. Give me a second. Can you move this closer? I'm just walking up around and what? It's not right here yet. It's gonna be though. I just want to do this. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. It's like it's easy, okay? Oh, my butthole hurts. You got it. There you go. Oh, I don't want to do this.
I'm wearing the same hat.
You're a rock star, though. Oh, heads up. Help me. You got it, Tessa. You got it. Baby looks great. Next one, baby's gonna be born.
Oh my God, really? I missed it?
Will you?
No, we can't see it.
No!
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
It's perfect. Both were 12 for
Oh, internet.
What is it? It's a girl! Sorry. Oh, my butthole. My butthole hurts so bad.
Oh, look at this sexist bottle of brown
Look at it, come here.
Is it a girl?
Yeah. My sister. Yeah, she looks good. I'm sorry, I dropped her. Oh, it was very low. Is she breathing okay? Yeah, just maybe move her around in the position. She's sweet.
It's probably good for the sake of time. Had you seen that one, Maren? It's a good one. Cool. Well, hopefully that's got everybody excited to talk more about being at births. Do you want me to start, or do you want to start, Maren?
Yeah, you do.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. So we titled this, how to become the radical midwife that your community needs for a reason, right? So we stuck the word radical in there, not just any kind of midwife, but a radical one. And so I wanted to just start off with, grounding us in what that means. And this is a direct, steal from one of the dictionaries. I can't remember which one I looked at, but, a radical, if we're talking about a person, if we're talking about like radical as a noun, is a person who advocates thorough or complete political or social reform. Radical also means like from the roots, so changing something from the bottom up, top down, just a complete change. And so, here at Indie Birth, the title of our book is Indie Birth, a story of radical birth love. It's a word that means a lot to me and us, I think. And it, to me, is just pointing out that we need a complete change, right? We don't need just like little tweaks here and there. Like our system is fundamentally broken everywhere in the entire world, as far as I am aware. I don't know of a single place that is currently doing birth justice and where people are treating pregnant and birthing women with the respect that they deserve. So we need like a pretty major overhaul. And so that's why we talk about radical midwifery as opposed to more, mainstream midwifery. We're going to take you through sort of 5 steps to becoming the radical midwife that your community needs. Do you want to start, Maren?
Yeah. So, more people here first.
I can let people in while you're talking.
The first thing we want to talk about is just what this word midwife even means, and essentially deconstruct the box that many people are in. So, people in the medicalized world don't often even know the variations of midwifery that are out there, right? Like sometimes people will say, oh, so you have to go to nursing school to be a midwife. And there's lots of women out there that also think that's true, or, haven't gotten far enough in the journey yet to realize that there's all kinds of different paths to midwifery. So we're not here to talk about all of the paths, obviously. We wouldn't even have time to do that. We don't really have the interest in the sense that, the path we both took and the path we're proposing for all of you through our school and, other methods is a particular way. So what does midwife mean and how do we get there? And we're going to talk about some of the other fine points that come in to determine what makes a midwife, and in the end of it all, how you would know if you've reached those goals, because there's also a lot of ambiguity sometimes around the word, especially if you're choosing a more radical path. So maybe, you're not looking for getting papers signed off. You're not looking for letters behind your name. It can also be kind of a confusing journey sometimes to figure out, what path am I on? How do I get what I need to be this midwife I have in my blood, in my heart? And how do I know when I'm there? You want to add to that, Margot?
Yeah, I had just like one other thing I wanted to add, which is that often when we talk about becoming a midwife or becoming a radical midwife even, we'll oftentimes have questions from people that are sort of like for further down the path. And so the way that we're laying this out today really is the order in which we recommend you sort of like do this step by step. So I guess what I'm saying is, in order to like really truly deconstruct the box and sort of like decolonize our own minds, really, we have to do like a pretty deep inquiry into like what does the word midwife mean and what kind of midwife do we want to really be. Because if we don't do that step first, we can sort of like spin our wheels and just get stuck in places that aren't really appropriate to even be thinking about yet. So, for example, I had someone again this week. I mean, I have many people probably every week, but I had one that particularly like got to me the other day. I don't know why. It must have been like the time of day or something. Someone being like, hey, like I want to be a midwife and your program looks great, but will it be recognized in, and I can't even remember what country they were in. And I was like, that's not the freaking point. Like, so this is what I want people to come back to, right? So like, yes, that is a good question. It's a legitimate question. We should have space for it. But like, until you've done sort of like this pre-work of like getting, and that's why we're talking about radical midwifery, right? Like radical midwifery does not mean that we play by every single rule. Like that's just not possible if we really are doing this in a radical way. Like following the rules is not radical. So I'm not saying that we should break rules for the sake of breaking them, but like we should not be making choices solely because of the rules that have been put out for us. Yes, it's something to think about, but it's not the place to start. So we're advising that you start with like, what does this really mean? And one of the best ways, truthfully, to do that and to really be thinking through this topic is to take our course, the Pay What You Can Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery. It's really fun and has a ton of this kind of stuff in it to help you think through these questions. So I just wanted to add that part, just that, this is step one. And if we don't do that, then we can get ahead of ourselves. If you want to add anything to that, Maren.
It's an open-ended topic. We could probably have talked just about this for an entire hour, so we're keeping it brief. But if you're taking notes or wanting questions to ponder later, I would write this one down and just ask yourself, what does midwife mean to me? And you're gonna have a lot to reflect on, probably past experiences if you have them. Maybe you've had a midwife, right? You're gonna have lots of stuff come in. And so the first thing would be, as Margot's saying, to kind of figure out what it even means to you and what you see yourself doing. Because truly there isn't a one way. We're here presenting the way that resonates with us most, but there are other ways to become a midwife. So this is your invitation to start to ask yourself those harder questions and sort that out. So moving on, number 2 here, and we have, I think, five points total. Imagining the midwife as a community leader. So maybe this is a little bit ahead of where many of you are at, but it's never too soon to think about changing your community for the better through birth. And you're all here to talk about midwifery and learn about that. But I know for me, when I deeply consider the meaning of the word midwife, it isn't solely someone that goes to births, And I think that video is even a great example, seeing Margot in that video, just taking photos, not getting involved really unless she was needed. Like, that is a radical view of midwifery. So acting as your community leader is sometimes not something people think about. And I know here in this community, I offer a free workshop. I know Margot does too, but most midwives don't. There's something that's been like cut off for a lot of midwives. They don't really think that education of women as a whole or the community is really under their job description. So we're asking you to rethink that, because at the end of the day, you might not be the midwife in the way you've learned about it, but you might be a really influential person in your community that teaches about birth, that consults about birth. So I guess this is an invitation to broaden your view of what you think midwife might mean and imagine just leading your community in a really powerful way. A side note, I think we're going to keep questions to the end for the sake of, taking the presentation, but we will answer them.
So I was working on a blog post about this week, so watch for that later, because it probably will be more eloquent than what I'm about to pull out of my noggin. But essentially, just coming back to what you said, Maren, and from a slightly different place, it's like midwifery largely has been McDonald'sized. Is that a word? It's fast, it's impersonal, and midwifery is covered by insurance, and it's sterile and it's cut and dry, and it's become usurped by the patriarchy. And so especially this year and this last year, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what does my ideal community look like. And I'm not going to pretend I know how to get there necessarily, but when I hold that vision of a community that's truly healthy and just and sustainable, there is no version of that where there isn't someone, probably called a midwife, who is, or many, right? One or many midwives or people filling this role of a wise woman in the community who helps other women stay healthy, right? Inspires them to be healthy on all levels, physically, emotionally, spiritually, through pregnancy, birth, beyond, also preconception, right? When we look historically at what midwives did, it was, like Maren is saying, about so much more than the birth. And just as our culture has become more and more specialized and things get more and more segmented and things are taken out of context, right? Midwife has become this tiny sliver of a thing that does not encompass what a community actually needs from someone in that role. And so this is where like you said, Maren, just imagining what it would be like in your ideal community to serve in your ideal way. And like, that is the other, that's another way that what we're talking about is radical. We're not just talking about birth. We're talking about like, how do we make everything better? Because everything starts at birth, right? So this is a big project. And again, like one of those first steps, even like you said, Maren, even if you're not there yet, I think it's important to have this foundation that you can then make choices from in terms of the next steps that we're going to get to. A good example, not to wax on, but a good example is we often have had students, I think I have an interview tomorrow actually with someone wanting to apply to the Indie Birth Midwifery School, which we'll talk about at the end, who had done some studying at another midwifery school, a MEEC accredited midwifery school, and she said it just like was boring, right? And it was sort of like underwhelming, and again, just this really narrow, strict black and white kind of midwifery, and that she wants more than that. But she didn't figure this part out first, right? So she's done 2 years of training through another school and now is like, oh shoot, I think I need something different. So that's a good example that I hadn't thought of till this moment of like, that's why it's important to do this foundational work first.
All right, so we actually have one of our courses in the Indie Birth Midwifery School, very similar to this phrase, connecting to your inner wise woman. And it's one of the first courses that new students start with. And it's really not about birth at all. So sometimes people are very surprised, they're like, when are we going to get into the actual birth stuff? But Margot and I both feel like we have to help people, and women in particular, get grounded in their own self first. So that's what connecting to your inner wise woman means to me. There's so many directions that could go. So again, if you're a note taker or someone that wants to reflect on this later, it's just whatever practices, whatever, traditions you might have or come across that allows you to access your inner wisdom. Because that's really one of the main foundations of our school and our entire belief system, is that we are all deeply connected. And sometimes, some people have to work harder than others at different times to make that connection. We all have what it takes to do this work from a place of integrity and honesty. And so we support our students very much in this process. And I would say, every student that I've ever talked to that has wanted to share about how like this course in particular has shaped them has said, what you'd want to hear, which is, wow, I didn't know that was all in there. I didn't know that I had to do this first before I figured out what kind of midwife I was going to be, or, how I wanted to run a practice, or any of the more clinical knowledge. I really appreciated being grounded in myself and looking at what I believe and how to take care of myself. So there's a lot of topics in there, but who is your wise woman? It's a great question to ask yourself on a daily basis. And do you feel connected?
Yeah, and it really goes back to that last slide too, where, if we're really going to reimagine this midwife role in a radical way that is of more and better service to our communities, and that role is a leadership role, that means that we as midwives need to be able to be role models, right? And so that's something that a lot of midwifery perspectives leave out. Again, if you're just the person who does the super clinical 15-minute visits, maybe you're a nurse midwife in the hospital setting and you don't really need to get to know your clients, and it's just kind of like they're in, they're out, and that's it, and it's out of the community context, maybe it doesn't matter that much. But in the vision we're putting forth, you kind of can't fake it. If you're wanting to work with women who are looking for this really holistic, wise woman model is what we call it, model of care, they're gonna not respect and trust someone who hasn't done this work themselves. Not that there's ever an end to the project, but it's a thing that is important to be dedicated to. Did you have more you wanted to say about that, Maren?
At the moment, let's see if some questions come up.
Cool.
Moving along nicely. So, number 4, learning what you need to know. And we have it in our minds and our hearts balanced in the school as science, so the scientific information, and again, this sacred part, this inner work, this other connection. We feel like both are equally as important, and we come at them different ways. So with that wise woman slide, we talked more about the sacred in that one. This slide is, there is actual stuff you need to know. And just kind of glancing at the questions, when you get into terminology and stuff like that around midwifery, I think, the term midwife to me includes clinical knowledge and experience. So our school is not easy by any stretch. The academic work is tough. And I think it's a beautiful combination between having that, that brain side where we're asking people to think, we're asking them to, learn the concepts we need to learn to do this work, especially if we're called upon to solve a problem. So, I love the births that look like Tessa's, the one that Margot showed. 90+% of the births I see are like that. But there is the percentage, whether it's in pregnancy, birth, or postpartum, where knowledge and experience is required. And that takes time, and it takes depth, and it takes intention to focus on that. That is not something you do in 3 months. It's something that you do in 2 years with us, hopefully, and then in an apprenticeship where you're learning hands-on. So this isn't us recommending like, oh, just sit with yourself, get connected, and go out and start attending births. Like, please do not hear that. To us, the word midwife includes knowledge, and a lot of it.
Yeah, and something I think that's really cool to think about. I've been listening to a neat audiobook recently that goes into some of this too, is like thinking about like the science and the sacred, and also how like they aren't really separate, right? So like it's an easier way to kind of like describe it, right? And to make it clear that we're doing both. But my apprentice Maria was studying here at my office yesterday after we saw somebody, and she was learning in depth about the placenta and how the placenta implants, and like the way that this is interesting if you're a nerd of birth and you haven't heard about this already. Like there's something called uterine milk. So like there's uterine milk that comes out and feeds the baby before the placenta is functioning. So she was asking me questions about this, and and so it's like nerdy and like big Latin words, but it's also so much this like sacred, like this is how each of us came to be, and something that we cannot recreate. And even if we know all these big words and the processes, it doesn't matter, because there's also still an element of mystery that no one can explain. And we've not been able to figure out how to grow a baby outside of the uterus. Because it's too complex and mysterious and sacred of a process. And so, just as an example, a real life example of what that looks like is, being able to sit with like, this is really cool and really interesting to learn about. And then also there's a spiritual component too of like, the placenta and the connection that we have with our babies and life, right? So we want to make sure we don't ignore that. And we combine them in other ways too. So like Maren was saying, we need to know the clinical stuff. And we also have like this class on the wise woman within, but also when we talk about clinical topics, we also weave in those components too, right? So we talk about emotions when we talk about postpartum hemorrhage. We talk about your own managing your own adrenaline, your own emotions when you're faced with something like a postpartum hemorrhage. We talk about like the possible spiritual significance of different things that can come up, and like, things to talk about with our clients around like, people who have cholestasis, like the itching or vomiting throughout pregnancy, like what can you not stomach? And none of those are like, silver bullets or anything, but they're all things to consider and bring to the table. And so, yeah, just to paint a little bit of a picture of how that looks in our teachings, and whether or not you learn with us, for you to approach it in the same way. Oh, that's right. Should we play Valerie's video and hope that my internet doesn't skip? Do you want to say anything about Valerie before I play it?
Valerie is just a beautiful, wise woman. She lives a couple of hours from me here and, has been a part of my life for several years. She was one of our best and most successful students, literally did every single assignment that was asked of her, and is out in the world, taking on women as a midwife and doing an awesome job. So she put together this short video.
And if I have this wrong, you should correct me, but my understanding too is that she had been attending births for a long time as a doula, and also has, 14 children of her own or something, right? So she did not come to the school without a lack of experience, and I think it was really cool. And she's, an older woman who came into our school later in life. So I think it's just really neat how humble she was as a student and how much she was able to get out of what we put together. So I'm going to play it and I'll stop talking. We can't hear her for the first few seconds and then it gets better.
Supports them. So my name is Valerie. I started school
Can you hear?
And finished.
Wait, you can't hear it? You can. You can't hear it at all?
No, it's in and out. I think it might be your internet. I have it downloaded too if you want me to.
Sure. Let's do that. I also muted myself, but I didn't think that'd matter because it was playing through the computer. Should I try it again?
Yeah, if you want. I'm trying to get it up.
Okay.
And abundant.
Can people hear that?
Beautiful, life-changing, just fulfilling my heart's desire, and serving women in my community and all over northern Arizona. So a lot of people who like home births are in remote areas, and it's just been so amazing to connect with people who are really in touch with wanting something different. And I've had the funny experience of more than one client firing their previous midwives in the valley or wherever and hiring me. And one even had fired 2 midwives and hired me. And it wasn't that she was picky and was dissatisfied with everybody. She was looking for something in particular. And through Ashley, who's affiliated with Indie Birth as well, gave my name to her. And they were completely blissed out and actually ended up having their baby on their own. Just because they were so prepared and confident by the time the birth came. So everything from childbirth classes, doing prenatals with these women, walking the heart journey, seeing their spirit deep down more than just the physical, it's mind, body, and spirit, learning all of these things and the dive so deep interpersonally at first, being prepared to serve women. And then it just seemed like the carpet was rolled out, and bit by bit, experience by experience, working with Marin a little bit, having the support of all the teachers. I have reached out to more than one and asking questions, and they've all been so willing. I just say, I was a student, you were one of my teachers, you gave me your number, and I have a question. And they've just been amazing. Like the support that you have ever after, like you're not on your own. You're not on an island by yourself. So you have a lot of support for the women that you're serving, and you're never going to know everything. You're always going to be learning something new, and just knowing how to find answers and being able to research and look for what I need if I hadn't been trained in that already.
has just also been super helpful and beneficial. So I feel completely prepared, as much as I can be, to walk with women, and the business aspect as well, feeling my own value. That was a journey as much as all the education and other things that I had experienced in my prior as well, but feeling the value and being able to charge money. And but then also there's some people that they get a break and it all works out. And I just feel like paying it forward and in the ways that we have just grown through this schooling, and the support of Marin and Margot and all the other teachers has just been profound. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them and say, if you're thinking about going to the school, jump in. Like, you won't regret it. A way will be made, and you will never regret it, and it'll only benefit your life and your community in one way or another. All right, blessings.
That's sweet. I didn't watch the whole thing earlier. That's cute. Cool. Onward.
Yeah, that was amazing.
So this is our last point, and then we have some other stuff we wanted to share too, and then questions at the end. So this is something we get asked about a lot. So again, the jumping ahead thing, right? So we often get asked, is this legal where I live, and how do I do this in a way that's safe? And then also, where do I get an apprenticeship? Like, those are the two things people ask. And again, valid questions. But as you can see, that's number 5 on our list. It's the last thing on the list because all the other stuff has to come first, we think. And sometimes there's overlap, right? But this is sort of the final piece that we wanted to talk about today. So there's a lot of ways that this can look. There are as many paths to getting hands-on midwifery skills as there are midwives. Like, every apprenticeship looks different. And everyone who's gone through this transformation of not a midwife to a midwife will have a different story. Some people work with one midwife, some people work with 10, some people go to a birth center, some people travel abroad, some people have limited experience because of certain circumstances, and they learn as they go. Like, there's a lot of different possibilities. Some are more ideal and some are less ideal. We also have our Indie Birth Midwifery Skills Workshop, which is a really great way to sort of rocket launch yourself into the midwifery skills and find a lot of confidence quickly, whether you've had an apprenticeship or not. So it can be really great for preparing for an apprenticeship or to sort of take your apprenticeship to the next level. So what else should we say about this? We have a lot of free resources out there already on apprenticeship. I know Marin has done a lot, I feel like in the last few months even, on her Midwifery Monday on YouTube thing. So I'm going to pause and gather my thoughts while you say something, Marin.
Right. Yeah. So many additional resources out there that we've done on apprenticeship. I'm trying to think if there's anything I want to say. Nothing that hasn't been said. All of these pieces are important. None of them, I don't think, they don't stand alone. They really complement each other so well. So, learning about, again, this science and sacred model, this wise woman way, really changes how we approach a skill. So it's easy to compartmentalize, something like a vaginal exam. And you might think, they must be against vaginal exams and, we don't ever do them, or we never recommend ultrasound, because I think there's also a lot of myths and stereotypes around all of this, right? And people have their views on what radical midwifery could possibly mean. So something like a vaginal exam is a great example of a necessary skill that I think everybody that's calling themselves a midwife must know how to do. Even if you feel like you're not great at it, you will need it at one point in time. And it also can be a completely sacred use of that tool. The relationship with the woman, there's so many ways that hopefully this experience, your training, your schooling, whatever, would give you this perspective that there really isn't anything that's bad. There is an appropriate time for all of the tools. And we as the midwife can really offer them in the sacred manner, and they can be received in that way. So a skill isn't just like a monkey technique, although some skills are super easy, and so you might, look at those and dig deeper and figure out, why do we even do those? Or what would the use of that be in a practice? And that's what we want our students to do, rather than, oh, all midwives do these things and they don't even know why they're doing them. And they don't even know any alternatives, right? So the skill is part of the package, and it's a really important part. So I guess that was longer than I planned on it being, but there you go.
Yeah, no, it was excellent. And I guess I didn't start at the start of this like whole thing, which is that, yeah, we do think midwifery skills obviously are important, which is why it's on a slide. And so getting them in some way or another is so crucial. And I don't know if we said that on the last slide too. Getting the knowledge, I mean, like you said, Marin, like the knowledge is crucial. And there are also a lot of ways to do that. Like I said, we'll talk more about our midwifery program that we've put together. But there are many ways to gather knowledge. There are many ways to gather hands-on skills. We're just wanting to kind of lay out the roadmap of what we think has to happen start to finish. And then also give you a glimpse into what we've made to sort of make that roadmap easier for you. So I had a couple photos from the recent skills workshop that I taught here in this room, actually. It was really fantastic, as always, and we have a little video from someone who came to. So this is like another thing, actually. So we do all sorts of things at these. So if you're someone who's like, I really do need to find more ways to learn the hands-on skills stuff, and again, not in the monkey way, in like the way that's blending all of these things together, this is a great option. So we have an opportunity usually the first day to feel bellies. We practice palpation. You can see our student Isis is measuring a client of mine's belly with the tape. We listen with fetoscopes. We do all sorts of fun things. We practice vitals on each other, blood pressure, pulse, watching for respirations, counting respirations. Like Marin mentioned, we do vaginal exams, we do catheters, we do, oh my gosh, we do so many things. We do venipuncture IVs, we look at placentas, we talk through and do scenarios for postpartum hemorrhage, and shoulder dystocia and neonatal resuscitation. There's a whole list on our site you can read through. I'm sure I'm forgetting things, but it's a jam-packed 3 days, morning to night experience. And people have told us it's great. Here's some, that's actually a photo of Tessa. That's funny, I didn't mean to do that. Tessa was at it before she had her baby come out, that you got to see come out just now. Practicing resolving a shoulder dystocia, another student of ours. And then there's another lovely photo of Adara listening with a fetoscope. And a quick video from Leah. So I'll leave myself unmuted since that worked.
I'm Leah Hymas, and I'm a student midwife who took the skills workshop here in Duluth with Margot and Alicia. I loved every moment of this workshop. I loved being with other midwives. I loved all of the skills that were presented. I feel like I'm coming away with more knowledge and more confidence. I really enjoyed the scenarios that we ran through, the role playing, working with other students to work out shoulder dystocias and postpartum hemorrhage. I enjoyed IV skills. I feel much more confident in my IV skills. We also heard from Marin walk us through vaginal exams, which helped us put vaginal exams into a greater picture of how we can make them less about the physical and more about the spiritual. We worked on a root chakra meditation before we did vaginal exam practice on each other, and I really enjoyed that, learning that skill and coming at that skill with more ease and less fear about approaching someone that way. I would absolutely recommend this workshop to new birth workers, to doulas who are exploring midwifery school, to currently practicing midwives who would like to do the skills practice a safe and comfortable and super fun environment.
I have a sense there of the kind of stuff that gets covered and that you need to make sure you cover one way or another, whether that's with us or not. When do we want to do questions? After this?
Yeah, let's do it after this.
Okay.
So, Indie Birth Midwifery School has been around for, gosh, I was trying to remember. Is it 4 years? Is it 5 years? I couldn't quite recall. But we have changed things up a little bit. We used to enroll once a year in July, and then we moved to enrolling twice a year, July and January. And now we've decided there's no reason to not accept women all of the time that are ready to do this. Our goal every single day in creation of this school and in what the work we do is to create more midwives. We know that's what's needed to transform the world in the way that we can help. We know that's what communities need, especially right now. And we just want women that are ready to do it. We don't want to make anybody wait 6 months to a year. So we are taking applications all of the time, and it's really simple. You can fill out an application. We just want to know more about you, obviously, and where you're coming from. We will do a short interview, Margot or I or one of our team members, and then you can choose to start. You know, there's no gimmick to like, oh, it has to be at this time for this reason. Nope, we just have it open, and we know the right people will do it when the time is right for them. As you can see, and Margot's mentioned it, another option, if you're like, yeah, I do want to do that, but maybe not for another year or two, is to just get involved with the community, get to know us a little bit better, and begin the course we have called the Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery. It's a pay what you can. And we suggest that if you're either in the I'm going to wait category, or if you're in the I'm just so new and I need to learn more first category. So that course, the Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery, goes through so many of the topics we've talked about today. The legalization of midwives, the prosecution of midwives, the different kinds of midwives. It's a pretty in-depth course. So you can start with that regardless, but if you're new, we say do that first.
For sure, and especially if you're thinking about it in sort of the terms that we've laid out today with the 5 different steps, which again are not mutually exclusive, but if you find yourself sort of like not sure what we meant maybe about the first 1 or 2, or like having a lot of questions about that, this is definitely where to start. And we've had people who are not new to us who have thought that they've read all the stuff that we've made, take it, and they've even said, like, wow, this was really good, even as somebody who's been kind of like on the indie birth train for a while. So it's a lot of fun. So again, just to recap, applying year-round is now an option, starting year-round is an option, and we're really excited to see how that ends up looking. We also just wanted to go over like what it is in case you're here and you're like, I don't even know what that is. I didn't know you guys had a school. And there's tons of information on the website. I guess something we didn't put on here also, in case you aren't aware, is we have this really fun student midwife primer also. It's an ebook, and you can opt into that, sign up for that, download that on our website, indiebirthmidwiferyschool.org. It's at the very bottom. And I'm also working on a pop-up. So that's another way that you can kind of get the lay of the land in terms of what we are talking about for student midwives. But back to the school, the Indie Birth Midwifery School is made up of 3 parts. So this is different, a little bit different if you've been following along for a while. This is the new and probably final way this is going to look for a good amount of time. So the 3 parts are the Intro to Autonomous Midwifery course. It's a 10-week course, and it is sort of, how do I explain it? I guess we realized after the first couple years of the school that our students were coming in with like this huge passion for birth and midwifery, and we assumed that they knew more about birth to start off with than they actually did. So we pretty quickly realized we needed to make an intro course. where we talked about the physiology of birth. We talked about sort of more like, yeah, just more intro material. And so we have that. It's 10 weeks long. And then after that course, you go into the 40-week Midwifery Foundations program, which is, of course, 40 weeks long. And within that program, there are 20 courses. Yep, 20. Sometimes I forget. There's 20 different courses. It's essentially like being in an online university, right? So when people try to figure out, when I'm trying to figure out how to describe this to people lately, what I've come back to is it's just like you would get, right, with an online university. You sign up for a class, like, except for you don't sign up for it. There's one track. It's a single track. You get put into the course. You're in it for the number of weeks that we've assigned for that course. Then we take you out of the course and you're in your next ones. So it's also the analogy we've been using is it's like a river. So you start it and you go down the river. It's one direction. Yeah. We have a lot of accountability built in that way. It's not a self-paced program. You have a certain amount of time, like I said, in the courses to work through the material. So like we said, this is really for people who are ready. And this is something we would talk about with you during your interview is if you have the time that is required to make the most of this experience. So after the 40-week Midwifery Foundations program, you go into the Advanced Midwifery program. It's structured a little bit differently. It's 28 weeks, and the courses are one at a time instead of multiple courses at a time. And so it's a deeper, higher level learning experience than the 40-week courses, which are more like a 100 or 200 level class if you're thinking about like college classes, right? So the advanced program has advanced courses, and that's where we do, multiple weeks of learning about postpartum hemorrhage, for example. We do multiple weeks of learning about complex birth, long labor's breech, twins, that kind of thing. So you're thinking about one subject for a few weeks at a time and going really, really deep with the material. Throughout all of that, so the entirety of those 3 parts, we have weekly live calls, and Marin, myself, Julie, and then our sort of network of indie birth friends, shall we call them, pop on as guest speakers. And that is where you connect more with other students. We've been trying to do that a lot more. I've been often sending people into small breakout groups and having them discuss a topic so that the students are getting to know each other and be able to form a community in that way and be of support to each other in that way. So it's also a way to get to know us. We often do like case studies and teach on topics that go beyond the course materials. They're really, really fun, and we've found that they're crucial to this online learning experience. And so I can't say enough about those. Those are sort of like the bedrock and the rhythm of the Indie Birth Midwifery School. We do give feedback on final projects. I don't know if we need to say too much about that. We do not do grades, and you can read more about that on the website. We did do grades at first, which was like a funny experiment, considering Marin and I both are like unschooling people, and quickly realized that did not help anybody and was just a total nightmare. So we moved to this approach where we just give feedback on final projects, and students have really enjoyed that. That they can focus on practical, useful projects that are going to be either pieces of content for themselves to put out, to start building awareness of what they're doing in their community, or often it's a practical, handout or protocol for themselves in their own midwifery practice, or it's something that's building their business in another way. In other words, it's not busy work. This is stuff that's useful that we want you to spend time on. And then, as we noted here, tuition, we've moved to sort of a sliding scale, pay what you can, of $7,000 to $9,000 for the entire package. And we can certainly talk more about that. I'm guessing there are questions about that. I can't see the chat box, but I think that's all for now. That's like the super fast summary of this almost 2-year-long program.
Great. So to double check, we're all on the same page, kind of glancing at the questions. Yes, the courses are all online. So the photos Margot was showing from the skills workshop is the one in-person opportunity at the moment that is taught by us in one way or another, but that's separate from the school. That's not included in this. That's a separate thing you could choose to do. And you don't have to be one of our students to choose to do that. But what Margot's talking about, the Indie Birth Midwifery School curriculum is all online. We use a platform that's really intuitive and easy and really pretty to look at. I don't think we've had too many problems, even for people that aren't tech savvy, just watching the videos, downloading the stuff, it's been pretty easy. And as far as the intro being a prerequisite, it's really not. That's not how we're thinking about it at all. We're thinking about it in this way. It's one program and it's made up of 3 parts. And all of them are equally necessary. So I don't know if that answers the question. It's not like you can skip the intro. We found that even people that have been to other midwifery schools value the intro because we are trying to lay the foundation for our perspective and things we want you to be thinking about. So it's not like, if you know the cardinal movements of labor, you should skip the intro. It's not like that at all. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, part of the issue was we were having students who were either partway through, usually with students who were partway through our Indie Birth Midwifery School, which at the time did not include the intro. And they were like, oh my gosh, I am also taking, for example, like our 13 Moons program, which is for parents. And they were like, wow, I wish I had taken 13 Moons before I started the school. So things like that were coming up where we were realizing that we needed to start at the actual beginning and not assume that people knew more than they knew. Even people who felt like they already had a pretty good foundation in midwifery stuff, whether through apprenticeship or other schools. So the intro used to be a prerequisite. That was kind of how we worded it, but no longer. It's just a package. Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to hit one of these questions as far as who is ready to begin with this entire program. And again, beginning with the intro. There isn't, there aren't prerequisites to that. It's not like you have to have nursing classes or, a certain number of this or that, or even births you've attended. You can start totally fresh, totally new. Maybe you've been a doula, maybe you're completely new. Like we have many students who have never dabbled in birth. They just, something hits them and they think that they want to do this. So you're welcome to apply. And again, you'd apply and we do the phone call with you to make sure that this is the right match. But yeah, nothing required of you other than that.
Yeah, that was me as a new student. I started when I was 21. About to turn 22, and I'd never been to a birth. I hadn't even thought about having my own kids yet, and one day I realized I wanted to be a midwife. So when I started learning about birth and when I started attending births with Marin, I was completely fresh. I have and had a bachelor's in sociology and women's studies. I hadn't even taken any health classes. Like, I hadn't even thought about being a nurse. So, we can certainly help you sort of do that discerning of if this is right for you or not. But I think my take home for you is if this is feeling like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to do this. I want to be this for my community. Like, I want this. Follow that impulse and don't try to overthink it. We have lots of, again, free resources. We have the Pay What You Can Beginner's Guide to Radical Midwifery. And we also, the application process is free. So if you submit your application and we feel like this is not really where you're at yet, like you're not quite ready, we'll just tell you that. So no harm, no foul. If this is what you're feeling called to do, like, go for it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Anything else? Any other questions that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, so there's a question about type of assignments in the 40 weeks part and the amount of time per week that typically students spend. I'm trying to think. Well, I was just looking at some assignments yesterday in the 40-week course, and one course in particular is called Wise Woman Prenatal Care. And I think that's a really fun course of, I put a lot of it together. Maybe that's why. But one of the assignments is for the students, after learning for a little while, they are told to go spend some time with a pregnant woman. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's someone they don't know at all, and do kind of a pretend prenatal visit on them. And there's specific instructions, and they can video it, they can take photos, and then they need to submit feedback about how they felt they did. So it's always really fun to read through those, because for a lot of people, it's their absolute first time doing something like that. Some of the other students are more experienced apprentices, but taking on that responsibility and taking on the challenge to do that project and then self-critiquing is just really, I think, helpful to them. They learn all kinds of things about themselves and how it feels to sit in that role of midwife, even just for half an hour. What kind of things you want to talk about, or how awkward it is, or where they feel like they need to learn more. So that's one project that comes to mind that I really enjoy, at least reading through.
And to paint a little bit of a picture, even though each course is different, essentially in the 40-week Midwifery Foundations program, you're either taking 3 courses at a time or you're taking 1, which is kind of like a little bit of a break. So there's no actual breaks, like you're always taking something, but the rhythm is 3, then 1, and 3, then 1. And you can see all of this on the website, indiebirthmidwiferyschool.org, on the curriculum page. It's all laid out, I think, really clearly. If you have any questions or if something's confusing, please tell me. I would love to make it clearer. And during each course, you can expect that you have something to watch, something to read, and something to think about every week. We do have a book list, so there are books required. The book list is not on the website yet because I am working on the final version of that and trying to figure out how to get it on there. But yeah, so each of the courses is broken down into weeks, so it's broken down for you. We have course checklists. We make it as streamlined and simple as possible for you to just see what you have for the week to do and do it. Julie's really amazing. She helps us with that kind of thing. So she'll even note on the course checklist how long each of our videos is so that you know ahead of time how much time it's going to take you to watch. So we have videos, like I said, we have readings. Sometimes there's little mini kind of like reflection assignments, but each course only has 1 final project. Sometimes it's something that you're working on throughout the course. I have a prenatal nutrition course that I primarily put together, which is in the 40-week Midwifery Foundations. And it's a project that takes place over the full time in the course. So it involves keeping a food journal, it involves critiquing your own food journal using some different tools that I give you, and then it involves swapping your food journal with another student and practicing giving nutrition counseling to each other and then giving each other feedback. So it's a thing that unfolds over the course of the course. The course. And just as I'm thinking about it, there's also a research methods class that I teach, and for that, it's a project that I'm helping you build, step by step, again, through the course. So that's the feel of the courses that are part of our school. The advanced midwifery program, the final projects, I feel like, are a little bit different. They're often like, put together your own sort of emergency card for this scenario. Like, what would you do? Or I'm trying to think what some of the other ones in that program are, Marin, off the top of my head. Can you think of other examples, good ones?
Let's think. Yeah, I mean, more protocol based, it's hard to imagine some of the things, like, what if your client has a breech baby? Like, throughout that course, you're encouraged to not only learn how to handle that, but how to think through that. Like, what are the person's options? What do you need to know? Where are your boundaries? And maybe making a handout or, an informed choice document to support you in that. So I think Margot said earlier, all of the assignments, I think we're pretty firm on this. All of the projects should feel really useful, not like busy work, not like you're back in, seventh grade having to memorize things. Like they should be things that you can actually use in your own practice. So we worked really hard to have it feel that way. So you're not wasting time.
Oh, just one other example that I wanted to give too, and this applies to the 40-week foundations program as well. But as I was thinking about the advanced midwifery program, and again, we say they're separate, and they are separate, and there are benchmarks. It's a way to sort of like mark your time through the program, but it will feel like a seamless experience. But as I was saying, some of our assignments also are to, for example, like take a video of yourself explaining a concept as you would explain it to a client. So again, like Maren said, practical. Like if you're going to sit in front of someone and be their midwife, you need to be able to explain GBS to them, for example. What would you say? How would you say it? Some of our students even write a script, and they read the script because they feel like they cannot just do it off the top of their head, right? In the way that they would really want to. So things like that are worked in also. So we're asking you to demonstrate your abilities as well, not just write about them.
Yeah, and some of the projects, people are really creative, like I looked at actual artwork yesterday that was the end result of someone's creativity after their first year in midwifery school. Other people have produced a podcast or, made an extended series of posts on social media. So our goal is that, again, it's useful and hopefully feels creative. Not everybody is creative in the same way. That's totally fine. But we would love for you to also produce some awesome content for the world and for yourself.
Which is why we have a class called Speaking Your Truth Content Creation, which is one of the first courses you take. Speaking of that, just really quickly, I just posted 2 more today, but we just started the Indie Birth Midwifery School blog. So we have the Indie Birth blog that has all of our articles and podcasts. And it always felt kind of weird to post our students' stuff on there. Like, it felt like they needed their own space so that it could be recognized that it was their stuff and it was coming out of the Indie Birth Midwifery School. So I think there's 3 right now, and I'm sure I'm going to be adding tons more, and it's all student created content. And it's like the stuff they're making is incredible. So you should totally go check that out if you're needing inspiration. I think everything that I've shared so far has been the result of a final project from the school as well. So that might give you some more insight into what that looks like too.
Yeah, just to finish up the couple questions here, we can be brief. The amount of time on coursework per week is generally about 15 to 20 hours a week. That's what most of our students have reported. However, it's like anything. Some people get things done a lot faster. Some people go down rabbit holes and can easily spend their time. As far as the actual coursework online, it doesn't include an apprenticeship. This is an online school with the option of in-person skills workshop. We will do our best to try and hook you up with an apprenticeship if possible. We have students all over the world. We know midwives all over the world, but that can't logically be a part of the school. So yes, you are encouraged to go do that, and the timing is up to you. So as far as the question, is it supposed to be at the same time? We really recommend ideally that you just have the school going on in your life, at least for the intro and the 40 weeks. And, maybe an apprenticeship happens after that. It would be helpful to have some birth experience going into the advanced program, but we can't control the timing, for anyone. Apprenticeship is kind of a weird bird. So if you come across a really great opportunity, you might choose to take it, and hopefully you can still hammer out the school, while you're doing that. People have done it all different ways. So we've had students, in very busy apprenticeships and they complete the school. And then a lot of students wait till they're done. And then finally, the payment option, we tried a pay what you can with our 13 Moons childbirth class. So if that's brand new to you, I would totally go check that out. Just pay what you can. It's indiebirth.org/13 moons, the number 13. And that was so successful and really felt so good and brought so many new people into our community that we wanted to do a similar thing with the midwifery school within reason. Obviously, we have to feed our children and all of that too. So we feel like it's pretty generous to offer people essentially a sliding scale between 7,000 and 9,000, again, for all three parts. And that's not the way it's been. We've charged up to, at this point, this last year, 4,500 for one, 4,500 for the second part. So this is actually a price reduction, which maybe isn't like the smartest business move, but we're hoping that it really encourages more women to do this. And then it is a smart move. It's like smart for everybody. So there are not payment plan options though. I'll save you the long version of that lecture. It's just not sustainable. This is our version of being sustainable, which is please, contribute in that range, but you can when you start. There are no refunds. You go through, you get all you can out, and we don't do this back and forth with payments and all of that. It's never worked out. And, side note, that doesn't really work out in a midwifery practice either. So it's advanced business training there for those of you that, are going to go do this. So.
What you didn't say though, and I think is important, is that we do have the option of paying with PayPal. And what that means is many of our students use this option, and essentially PayPal finances it for them. If you qualify, they give you a 0% APR financing for 6 months, something like that. So that would make it be able to be broken into 6 months of payments, if that makes sense, without any interest, or with interest, you could take longer to pay it back. And this is something that I'm always happy and excited to talk more about too. This was a part of why we created the Birth Warrior Project. Not the main reason, but was like kind of a bonus, because we had students who told us that they could not afford the midwifery school, and they were trying to figure out sort of how to proceed. And my advice, if that's you, if you're in that boat, would be to check out our Birth Warrior Project. We've had incredible success with people going out into their communities and being doulas and birth educators, and easily making the money to pay for the midwifery school from their income as a doula in their community. So it also has the double bonus of then also getting them some birth experience, even if it's not home birth experience. Sometimes it is. It depends on your boundaries. But in other words, that's another really creative way to make an income, not just to pay for school, but also to maybe pay your way through an apprenticeship as well, because that's a question we get asked about a lot too. So PayPal financing is available. You are able to check out if you qualify. I don't have the link handy at the top of my head. If that's a question you have, feel free to email me and we can chat about that more. So you could figure out ahead of time if you'd qualify. But that's not an us thing, that's a PayPal thing.
Yeah, and finally, trying to wrap this up, I see people are needing to go, and we really try to be respectful of the time that we've allotted here. There is definitely emphasis on business and personal development. So for sure, there is a business course that's in a couple of sections in the advanced midwifery program. And Margot and I are constantly offering other opportunities to our students, self-development kind of workshops. We did a retreat here with our current students a couple of months ago. We took 2 Saturdays of our own time to do that with them. And we don't know exactly what we'll be offering as students come in, but just saying that those are 2 areas of passion for us both. We want people to not only be awesome midwives, we want you to be smart and intuitive and skilled, but then we want you to go out there and be able to do this in a way that is sustainable and does make you money, because it should make you money for sure. And it should not only make you money, but you should be fulfilled and happy in doing this work. So yes, that is included.
Awesome. And if that's something you're curious about, I've mostly been doing them with doulas, but I have kind of a little series on my podcast, of live business coaching calls that I've been doing with people that I'm recording and then putting them out as episodes. So I just did another one 2 days ago, and maybe I'll I mean, my intention has been to do some with midwives as well. But so far it's been doulas, since it's been a lot of people who've come out of our Birth Warrior project.
That question, I think you'd be better in answering this succinctly. But how does the Birth Warrior Project act as a prerequisite for IBMS? Can you sum that up better than me?
So it used to be that what our idea was last year was that we would give kind of two options, that someone could do the Birth Warrior Project or the intro course as a prerequisite. So we've gotten rid of that and made it so that this is just as simple as possible for all of us. Like, this is what it is. There's one thing and this is it. Because it was kind of confusing. So the Birth Warrior Project is not a prerequisite. A lot of it does sort of overlap with the Intro to Autonomous Midwifery, except for the midwifery specific content. So it's not a prerequisite, but again, this is also part of why we've built in the pay what you can. So if you're someone who does do the Birth Warrior Project and you're like, hey, I've already invested this money and now, I really want to pay on this lower end of this scale, you do you. So essentially you can do the Birth Warrior Project and this for the same price that you used to be able to do just the 40-week Foundations and Advanced Midwifery program. Does that make sense? So you'd be getting 4 of our programs for the same price that you were getting 2 before. So it's not a prerequisite. It does overlap with the Intro to Autonomous Midwifery. Some of the projects, I think, are also the same, some of the book, required reading. So that first 10 weeks, you would be essentially reviewing some of the material and then doing a little bit of extra midwifery-specific investigation and learning. Did I answer that in a way that makes sense to you, Maren? I think you're muted.
Yeah, hopefully it made sense to everybody else, but I get it. I think that's about it. If there are any last questions about the school, you can type them in. You, of course, can get a hold of us by email quite easily. Margot@indiebirth.org, Maren@indiebirth.org. If you're not on our free social network, you really should be, because A, it's free, and B, we can get to know you better there. I know there was a couple questions about terminology and birth keepers. Honestly, I don't think we have the time today to go into that, but I'd love to have you post that as a question on our social network. So address social.indiebirth.org. I imagine most of you are on there, but again, join for free and post these additional questions there. We'll give our 2 cents and we can have a community discussion about some of the other stuff. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, last resource then to share, though, I didn't see any of the questions, so since my chat box isn't open with the screen sharing, but Maren and I recorded a podcast partially talking about the term birth keeper. It's called We Need More Midwives, and it should be near the top in the blog roll, or on the podcast archive page, so indiebirth.org, and then click podcast archive. And you can even search for it, but it's called We Need More Midwives, and we both kind of give our 2 cents, I think, there, and you could hear all about that, and also, like you said, post it on the social. So we have tons of stuff. If you have a question about something, we probably have already created a resource, so don't be shy. Please ask. We love people discovering the things that we've made for just such a reason, so that's what we're here for. Thank you all for being here and taking your time out of your Saturday, or I think maybe Sunday, for our New Zealand friend, at least, that I saw here. And for being interested in doing this work. I won't say too much more, but I was watching a documentary last night about 2040 and what life could be like in 2040 if we sort of did all the things that we know we should be doing, and utilized all the things we already have at our disposal to be better people, essentially. And it was really cool, and it made me think about birth, and we have a path. We have the tools, we have what we need with each other and in ourselves, and we know what to do. It's just time for more people to be doing it. So if you're one of those people, please do it, whether it's with us or not. And if it's with us and you have questions, please reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Everyone.